Once the leader who steered Sri Lanka through its economic collapse, now under arrest. Ranil Wickremesinghe, six-time Prime Minister, one-time President, faces his toughest trial yet. At the centre, a London stopover, a graduation ceremony and nearly 17 million rupees in state funds. From Havana to London, the journey now haunts Wickremesinghe's legacy. Former Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe has been arrested in Colombo on charges of misusing public funds. According to a senior police detective quoted by international media, the 76-year-old leader was taken into custody after intense questioning by the Criminal Investigation Department. We are producing him before the Colombo Fort Magistrate. Senior Sri Lankan police detective. Wickremesinghe has rejected the accusations, but his arrest marks a stunning downfall for a man once hailed as the steady hand who stepped in during Sri Lanka's darkest crisis. In July 2022, Wickremesinghe assumed the presidency following Gotabaya Rajapaksa's dramatic resignation amid mass street protests. He was credited with guiding the country out of the brink of economic collapse. The scandal at the heart of this investigation began in September 2023, when Wickremesinghe travelled to London. On paper, this was presented as part of a wider overseas tour. But investigators say the real purpose was personal, to attend the PhD graduation ceremony of his wife, Professor Maithri Wickremesinghe, at the University of Wolverhampton. What has drawn outrage is not the event itself, but how it was funded. The London leg had no official agenda. Yet, according to investigators, the trip drained nearly 16.9 million Sri Lankan rupees in public funds. A 10-member state-funded delegation, including official bodyguards, accompanied Wickremesinghe, pushing the costs even higher. What officials now describe as a private family trip was, they claim, disguised as state business. As the probe deepens, high-ranking aides have already come under scrutiny. Former Presidential Secretary Saman Ekanayake and Private Secretary Sandra Pereira were among those questioned, while more staffers are expected to be summoned. Wickremesinghe has strongly denied the charges, claiming his wife's expenses were covered privately, insisting no state money was spent on the London stopover. But despite his defence, his arrest has made history, the most senior political figure in Sri Lanka in recent memory to be detained over allegations of corruption and misuse of state resources. And this is not an isolated case. Investigators point to a pattern of extravagance during Wickremesinghe's presidency, lavish overseas trips with large entourages, running up costs into the hundreds of millions of rupees. Multiple inquiries into fraud and abuse of public funds are now underway. This moment comes against the backdrop of Sri Lanka's worst economic collapse in decades. Public anger toward political corruption is boiling over. And now, demands for accountability and transparency are louder than ever, as the nation reckons with the price of unchecked power at the very top. Born on March 24, 1949, in Colombo, Ranil Wickremesinghe has been a constant presence in Sri Lanka's turbulent political arena for nearly half a century. Trained as a lawyer, he entered politics in 1977 under the United National Party, just as Sri Lanka was stepping into a new economic era. From Minister of Youth Affairs and Education to Industries, Wickremesinghe built his reputation as a reformist, a man of policy and precision. In 1993, he rose to Prime Minister, the first of 6 times he would hold the post. His style was technocratic, polished and pragmatic. He became synonymous with economic reforms, liberalisation and efforts to modernise the nation, though often criticised as being out of touch with the grassroots politics that defined the island. But it was in 2022, during Sri Lanka's gravest crisis since independence, that Wickremesinghe's name was etched into history. As protests swept the streets and Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled the presidency, Wickremesinghe took the nation's highest office. To many, he seemed the last man standing, an unpopular figure thrust into power at a desperate moment. In office, he moved to stabilise a collapsed economy, negotiated with international creditors, and restored a semblance of order. For some, he was the steady hand Sri Lanka needed. For others, he was the symbol of an unpopular political class clinging to power. 2 years later, in the 2024 election, he secured just 17.2% of the vote, a resounding rejection. Yet his defeat did not erase his place in history. For decades, Ranil Wickremesinghe has been a survivor, navigating shifting alliances, crises, and political storms. Loved and loathed in equal measure, his career mirrors the resilience, contradictions, and unfinished story of Sri Lankan politics itself.